of the word. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I am Naji, your host today, joined by Jeremy Morgan, who will be walking us from imposter syndrome and his experience in the pharmaceutical industry to a million steps through the Camino de Santiago in Spain, always driven by his deepest beliefs of leading with red energy and drive, combined with harmony, empathy, and genuine care. Jeremy is a global healthcare senior executive with an extensive experience in the biopharmaceutical industry across the globe. He's currently Senior Vice President, leading the rare disease business at Kyowa Kirin. Jeremy started his career as a research biologist and then joined the pharmaceutical industry in 1986 in sales. He had several assignments in the UK, USA, France with increasing responsibilities before becoming the general manager and leading different affiliates from Australia to Germany and leading the international diabetes business unit. Jeremy had also experiences in market access, consulting before returning to his passion and joining Kyowa Kirin. Jeremy is a champion of diversity and inclusion in the workplace and brings extensive external engagement experiences from multiple charity and industry boards. Married to Claire, he has 2 kids and enjoys all sports. You enjoy cooking and very long distance walking. Eager to hear about all this live from the UK. Welcome, Jeremy. Thanks for being with me today.
Great to be with you, Naji.
Jeremy, let's start with what's in between the lines about who you are. What's your story beyond all this impressive career that you had in healthcare?
What's my story? Well, so first of all, let me just start by saying I want to offer all the people who potentially listen a cliche alert. Who am I? Well, I feel my story is an extraordinarily lucky one, and I hope that there are some things there that are really interesting and engaging for people, and not just as I say, the cliched stuff that so many people get to experience. Who am I? Well, I'm a Welshman, and as you've introduced my family. I think who am I? The biggest piece of me is from a mum and dad. And probably the easiest way to describe who I am is to give you a very brief introduction to both of them. And then perhaps as we have our conversation, I can share with you a little bit the bits that I love that I've taken from them, and the bits that still at 57 drive me absolutely nuts that I wrestle with, that I also took from them. So both of my folks left school at the age of 14. They're both Welsh as well. My father was the youngest of 12 children, and basically the family couldn't afford for him to continue his education beyond the age of 14. He lost his dad before he was born. His father died while mum was expecting him, so he was brought up by all the older brothers and sisters, and he told me on many occasions a story, Naji, of any time he would get angry at the world or moan about his life, his elder siblings would simply kick him and basically say, you're responsible for yourself. And any time that he threatened to leave, they would simply pack his bags and say, well, okay, here it is. Here's your bag. Here are your clothes. Get going. Go if you don't want to stay. And that's important because I grew up with a dad who had a fierce, still has. He's 92, still going strong, lives on his own. Yeah. Had a fierce sense of independence and drive for security. The whole thing in his life, and God bless him, he went back into education in his 20s, qualified as an engineer. And as I was about 15, 16, his career really kind of took off, and he had a lot of success going forward. But his mantra to me as a father was always security, security, security. And for him, that was about making money and being able to pay the bills, put the roof over, provide for his family. Emotionally, that was probably not the greatest relationship that any son could possibly have with his dad. But the flip side was my mum. My mum was this absolutely amazing lady. She left school at 14 to look after her brother because her mother had a nervous breakdown, and which was the euphemism for basically major depression at the time. So she also, as a result of leaving school so early, developed a real passion for education and development. But the big thing that then happened to my mum was in her adult life, she became a good Samaritan. So she would always do the night shift, allowing, the people who do that work is absolutely amazing. The stories they have to listen to and support. She became a foster parent and looked after other children, became an adoptive parent. She was a Sunday school teacher, so she taught at the Christian Sunday school on a weekend. But the other thing that she had was she smoked like a chimney and drank even more. She lived her life on both ends of the spectrum, a fundamentally super kind, lovely lady, but also an absolute party animal. I remember my parents as a young kid in my teens who would basically throw all-nighters. I mean, it was, she would go to church, and then the debate would be who was going to be pouring the first gin and tonic in the group of neighborhood friends. So those two influences was the more I look back in my life, my father kind of produced the spring, the coil that kind of drove this security and this don't look back with regret, son. That was the other thing that he would always say to me, which made me probably a little bit fearful of risk going forward. But my mum was just the most wonderful, authentically kind person that you could ever possibly meet, and never, ever, ever did anything other than continue to show love for her brother all the way through her adult life and continue to give that to others. So who am I? I did okay in school, interested in doing medicine, didn't get the grades, so did biology instead. And as you said, ended up working in a laboratory, and did that for a little while. And the interesting thing was working in this lab. It was an industrial laboratory, and I was researching fungicides for industrial paint products and coverings. And there would be sales reps rocking up, Naji, coming in, selling the polymers and aggregates and fine chemicals. And they'd have a nice suit on, and you could see the new car out in the car park. And I was thinking, I could do your job better than you could do your job. I'm a really, really average scientist at best. And, and you get to have all those things. Again, go back to my father, materiality, just make money, be secure, be secure, be secure. And that set me off basically into the sales career with Eli Lilly, and set me off on a path with really chasing any and every career option without really any adult reflection on, am I being deliberate and mindful about the experiences that I gather. I was just lucky enough to succeed and have bosses along the way who gave me great opportunities so that I could jump through different jobs and do the sorts of things that you have described. And then probably somewhere in my mid-40s, and I feel bad even saying that because it should have clicked significantly earlier than that, I started to become far more deliberate about learning and thinking about myself as a person, as a leader, about what was important, and reflecting on going back into the past.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for sharing your story, your powerful parent story, also who shaped, as you're saying, who you are today. I'm going to pick up on something because in the intro we discussed that we had some discussions, both of us, around it. You mentioning it again, right? Like, you've been lucky, you had the chance to have a great boss and different bosses, obviously, for your career. I'd love you to talk a little bit more about it, right? Like, is it truly luck. I don't think it's only luck, right? Like we create our positive luck. There's a lot of books around us how to create positive luck and continue to succeed. We discussed about imposter syndrome. So it's I'm always amazed by hearing such a great leader like you talking about. I've been lucky throughout my different moves and until the mid 40s. So maybe let's start with this first part, and then we can dig a little bit deeper after 40, how you were intentional about your moves.
Yeah. So Naji, the reality is I have been lucky. I mean, I worked for some people that I probably thought were idiots along the way, but mostly I worked for and with and had people who were really pretty wonderful. And I think for us in healthcare, we talk about healthcare typically attracts sharp intellects and good people who want to make a difference. So I think it's quite a fortunate thing about the industry that we're in. You're hinting a little bit, I think, about if you give out positivity, you're much more likely to get it back. And I do think there's a lot of truth in that. But when I say I'm lucky, let me give you two things. 1990, the head of the Lilly business, the head of pharma ops for the UK, looked at me as a young associate, fresh out of sales, and saw something in me that I sure as hell didn't see in myself. So you have to imagine, again, I told you about relatively humble beginnings, although there was always food, there was always love, there was always security, there were always, the core things, the important things were always there. But this guy looked at me and basically said, I think we can move you on, Jeremy. And my ambition had always been, if I'm really lucky in my life, maybe I become a district sales manager, maybe I become a first level manager and get to lead a group of people. That was my life ambition. I couldn't see anything beyond that. And all of a sudden this guy comes along and says to me, Jeremy, I think you can do more. And he actually, as the head of pharma ops, took me like 3-4 levels below through some quiet training sessions, coaching sessions, actually videoing interactions and interviews, and gave me some really, really robust feedback, and then acted as a sponsor to get me nominated for a thing called an international sales management development program that Lilly used to run in through the 90s, where I was basically taken out of the UK, sent to corporate life in the USA, and rapidly cycled through 2 global office assignments and a sales manager job to kind of accelerate the development. Very, very cool, privileged program. But the luck was that Bill was there and looked at me and saw that. And then later on in my life, in the late 90s, I was the director of new product planning. And Cameron Marshall, Cameron was the guy who basically led all the strategic planning, new product planning, all the marketing for the European region. And he said, Jeremy, you know what he said? You've never done an MBA. You don't have that high contrast experience. If we're going to get you to the most, serious executive levels in the business, I need to pull you out and I need to give you that cliche high contrast experience. And I was already thinking, I've won the lotto in the job that I was in. It was a spectacular job working, new product planning. You got to interact with the voice of the payer, the regulator, the medic, the commercial teams. I mean, a fascinating job to be in. And here's this boss again who says, Jeremy, you can do more, and sponsored me to go do the senior executive program at the London Business School. And on that program, there was a billionaire entrepreneur from Saudi, the head of Swiss Post, the health minister from New Zealand, the head of a big hospital chain in the US. This amazing group of people who I had a fantastic time with over the weeks in the program. And again, light bulb moment. All of a sudden, you realize, you know what? Actually, I can function. I can compete. I can contribute with these people who previously I would never have considered. Now, again, having Cameron and Bill in my life, was that anything that I know? I mean, I had the good fortune of working in a business culture where there were two senior leaders who probably through their own experiences had seen that to reach and be a sponsor and help and show real care and attention for others. Those bits that's genuinely being blessed, because that doesn't happen for everyone.
Yeah. And so fast forward, right? You shared after 40s, you started to intentionally make the decisions, and really healthcare became a passion, right? And now you're leading obviously globally an organization in rare diseases, which is also a lot of passion and intensity, I think, for what you can impact and what you can bring for patients across the globe. How would you define now your personal purpose, your why, and how do you deliver on it with your teams across the different geographies today?
So if I may, Naji, what I want to do is come back and tell another story, because there's another story that I think leads in that sort of that transition point.
Yeah.
So you and I have talked about this in the past. There are really, for me, three elements of my leadership journey, three tensions. Okay, one is about somebody but care and live her life through caring for others, and then coming into a Lilly organization where leadership success was about dialing up the work rate in the classic general managers and leaders had all this red drive energy. You walk in a room, you listen, you decide, and then you drive. That's what you're taught to do. And yet inside me was this screaming tension of wanting to embrace harmony and empathy and listen and help folk, not to be directive and driving. So that tension was a key part of the story. The second piece was around EQ, IQ, and always around, I told you I didn't do as well in my school life as I'd hoped. And all my life, I have now and still tend to overweight IQ when I assess talent and get involved with developing people. I tend to look at lists of postgraduate qualifications and be in awe of the intellect, out of balance perhaps with emotional intelligence and other life skills. That's the second thing that I've wrestled with all of my life. And then probably the third piece, which we can park and maybe talk about later, is the older I get, the more I see many rights, and the more I realize that operationally, to get something done, you have to choose, you have to pick one or two things. Not everybody can be right in a situation. To make things happen, you can't just create consensus for anything and everything going forward. That tension I've tried to manage. Now, the reason I give you those three things about my leadership journey is, if we go back to 2003, that was my first general manager job. And I'd come out of the cocoon, the loving cocoon of corporate life with all the development support, arrived in Turkey as the new general manager. The previous guy had basically been fired. There's 600 people in the business, 600 people in the business, and a proposal on the table to recruit another retail sales force. It was in the days where Turkey still had branded generics. You could promote branded generics. There was no reference pricing. It was just a branded generic bonanza in the country. I arrive, and literally within days, the government passed a new pricing decree that creates reference pricing, that basically takes out all of the pricing for branded generics and takes them down to proper generic levels. And by the way, at the same time, our regulatory officer discovers two illegal dossiers copying patent-protected medicines that we had in our portfolio at the time. So all of a sudden, I've been dropped into this business with an agenda of growth, and now we're faced with right-sizing the business from 600 to 300 people going forward in order to make it sustainable and make the income statement stand up. Now, here's what was really important, Naji. At that time, when I talked to you a little bit about the style of red energy, driving energy, I had a leader who I was reporting to, who was absolutely in that mode. an amazing guy, authentically. He wasn't putting it on. This wasn't something he learned. This is somebody whose spring was just the most natural thing in the world, was to point direct, and incredible energy and self-belief. And he basically, what he said to me was the following: you're going to live and die, Jeremy, by the outcomes. Okay, so the income statement at the end of the year as a GM is yours. You hit it, you're a hero. You miss it, then I'm all over you. It's going to be the end of the world. And by the way, of course, you've got to do that through the right behaviors. You've got to be compliant. You've got to live our values quite rightly. The high performance, high integrity, the classic stuff. So it's my first GM role, and my boss is telling me, okay, yeah, you own this. And then he says, the way to do a restructure, point one, you cut deep. You absolutely cut deep, so you never have to revisit and go back like a slice in the onion. You make one cut, you do it hard, you get it done, and then you absolutely push the organization so that everybody who's staying is running at 150%, so they're focused on their job and not worried about what's changing in the business. So I'm thinking, okay, first GM job, great words of wisdom going forward. But again, that inattention that says, you lead through others, you lead through people, that's the way to get there, caused me, no end of angst. But he'd given me the get out clause, which is you own the income statement, you own the results at the end of the day. So I sat with the management team, and of course, we did the classic exercise of thinking through how are we going to make this happen. And after a lot of discussion and soul searching, the absolute conclusion for the team was we're not going to drive the organization, the people who stay in a way to stop them focusing on those who leave. In fact, we're going to repurpose the whole organization to look after the 300 who are going to go. And that came in a number of forms. It came into a process where we used the whole executive senior leadership, interviewing and coaching people to see who could stay, who might be able to find other work. We created a shared list internally so that people who were staying could work and find work for those who were leaving. And that list obviously over time diminished. So we actually gave people an objective to help the folk who were off the payroll and going. So we really made it a people-centric process, and at the same time, we did some other, I think, some pretty cool things about reimagining the vision of the business through a lens of the Turkish culture. Now, if I tell you, at the end of that process, the 2 years after that, engagement scores went through the roof because people saw a management team, a leadership team, authentically caring, having to go through a business agenda, but really engaging with the people. And then if we flip that back to me as a leader, that was the biggest validation all of a sudden that I could lead. I didn't have to be the red leader, the driver leader. I could very authentically tap into other elements of my natural wanting to be empathetic and engage with others and still produce outstanding business results. And it was a living, breathing validation of, okay, that's how you want to lead as you go forward. If you show that, if people feel that, if that's real within you, people are going to pick up on that. They smell, forgive me for the broadcast, but they smell the bullshit very, very quickly if it's not authentic. In that circumstance, it was very real, and that care shone through even when I left that business. So there's one little story in Turkey, and then the second one, which is much shorter, but equally as important. One of the first sales conferences that I went to in Turkey, the guest speaker was a newly retired general commanding the Turkish forces, and you know that Turkey still has conscription. It still has one of, I think, behind China, the second largest army in the world. Mm. And this guy had commanded a force of 10,000 men down, against the Kurdish freedom fighters. And this is a guy who had, really been right at the real world, not playing on training fields. He'd been in the real world again with a force of 10,000 men. Now, again, if I tell you, going into Turkey, when I first arrived as the GM, I signed up to go and play five-a-side soccer with the guys in the office. And when I played soccer, anybody who tackled me or kicked, they said, "I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir." So polite and so respectful of position. It was not true. I mean, incredibly so. So you can imagine that when you think about that, and then going to meet this general in this sales conference, his speech was going to be on leadership. And what I was expecting him to talk about was clear lines of control, clear objectives, making sure that we've got robust governance and follow-up going forward. And when I sat with him the evening before, and I said, so you're going to talk about leadership. What is leadership for you? And the first two words that came out of his mouth were "know thyself." Totally not what I was expecting. The first things he said was "know thyself." And then he gave a beautiful essay on self-examination and the power of reflection and as a leader creating an environment for people to reveal in themselves their capabilities, their frailties, the things. And that, he has got 10,000 soldiers fighting real stuff on the border, and his essay on leadership was not about the logistics and line and clarity. It was about know thyself and how you could feed that. And that for me was a huge trigger. So the validation of all the upbringing my mum had given me, and then suddenly this person who I'd seen plugged in a completely different place saying leadership was all about this notion of self-reflection. Hugely powerful, and that's really what set me off, Naji.
Yeah. Well, this is those two powerful stories are really the example, the concrete example that, when we talk about genuine care, loving organization, it's not about like those soft things. It's really done for a better performance, for people to thrive, right? And as you said, like, look at the results that kept on coming again and again because of this authentic leadership, right? Like they saw it in you, they saw it in your executive team. So how are you? If we jump to last year with all that we've been going through as a humanity, right, with the pandemic, how did you translate those learning early on that you had 15 years ago, starting in a general management position to a senior exec now? How did you translate those during moment of tension to make sure that your teams around the globe feel this authentic leadership and still drive results for patients and for the business?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm so first of all, I hope they do. So I think the challenge for all of us working virtually is in a one-on-one setting like this. Talking like you with you now, we could have a cup of coffee together. It's like I'm sat with Naji. We're in the room. We're having a chat. But the dynamic you miss, I think, as a senior leader, the group dynamic, seeing how a group interacts and really moves forward in this virtual environment where you're picking up so much more of the non-verbal signals and the interaction, the quality and support for one another. I miss a lot of that. So I've joined Kiowa and only worked in a virtual environment, and that means that I'm not that sure on how good my diagnostic is on where we are. Certainly the engagement scores look great, and I'm very lucky that our CEO Abdul Mullik and indeed the senior leadership team inside the business all, and you can imagine, I should stop and say, when I was looking for this job, the thing that I said was, I want to be an environment, a people-first environment going forward. I want to win. I want to cry. I want to laugh. I want to learn with a great group of people. These are the things ahead of making a difference in the disease states. It was the people things that I was seeking out. So I knew going in from the little bit of research I was able to do with the people that I met, that was absolutely real to the leadership team. So, in simple terms, we were able to offer up financial support. We haven't been applying, the pressure of bonus programs. We've restructured to enable folk to not feel, if a hospital's shut, if a specialist center, I can't call on them, then you can't ask me to make 2-3 calls, deliver a seminar, do those things. So we've been very, very careful to listen and support. We've done simple things like making Headspace available, an app for people to reflect. We're very clear with our written and all company employee meetings that we start with a dialogue about not just the patient that we're trying to serve, but also about you can't serve others until you look after yourself. And let's make sure that we look after each other and care for each other in order to be able to care for our customers. So that's come in the sense of policy, in the sense of a little bit of financial support, in a sense of understanding and being flexible with objectives, with providing some other mechanisms, reminding people of employee assistance programs, just the recognition that for some folk sat in a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 kids out of school, trying to work with a laptop and a dog, running around on the sofa. I mean, it's a nightmare. And the privilege of having your own study at home and the coffee machine going and all that is not the reality for so many people. And I think as a team, we've done a nice job. I like to think, I'm going to tell myself we've done a nice job of the recognition of the real world circumstances for so many of our people, and then also try to anchor them to purpose and also to what the future of work might look like going forward. And what have we taken of all the new skills of virtual working plus the flexible pieces that will carry forward when this damn virus goes away, and what of the bits of the old world that we will re-embrace and love and enjoy when the world opens up again.
Let's jump into and try and play a game now with you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you a word and just give me what comes top of mind. Okay?
Okay.
So you talked a lot about the power of reflection. You mentioned it a couple of times, and even now in your organization, you talked about an app to help people reflect. So the first word I'm gonna say is Spain.
So Camino comes out for me is every single time now. Spain throws Camino.
Tell us a little bit more.
as you know, so 2017, after I left Lilly, following 32 years of just a wonderful experience, I had the huge privilege of financial security, of my health, and a wife who said, go clear your head and decide what else it is that you're going to do. So within 48 hours of my last day at Lilly, I had my backpack on, and I flew down into the south of France, went to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and I spent 35 days with a backpack doing the pilgrim walk from Saint-Jean over to Santiago across northern Spain. And every night that would be, I would diarize both on life and on the journal of the day. And the goal was really to, reflect on the important things and try and really capture that and write it down. And that was a wonderful experience. It took me a couple of weeks to genuinely reboot. So, let me give you a practical example of that. When you walk that Camino, every day you go past stands where people might be selling cans of drink or water at cost. There are other places where you go where there are families who've got a stand, and it's they're giving cookies and hugs for free. There are other places that are donativo, all right? Donativo, where there's a box and it just says, pay what you can, take what you need and pay what you can afford. And even for accommodation in the evening, there are places that you can stay that are donativo. So you could go get a basic access to, a restroom, access to running water, and somewhere to put your mat down and sleep, and then pay €1, €5, no money at all. So in the first few weeks, I was going past these donativos. My head was going, I was looking at the pricing models. I was looking at the stands who had a markup, the stands who were doing it for free, and I was thinking, Donativa, this is you know what? There must be lots of people like me who come, middle-aged, slightly fat executives trying to clear their head, who've got plenty of cash in their pocket. And that Donativa, you know what? I bet like me, there's people who pay twice, 3 times thinking, I'm going to help out a colleague. It literally took me 2-3 weeks before I had, again, the light bulb moment. It was nothing to do with the money. Virtually everybody who did that Donativo, it was about love. It was about, I want, my payment is the hug and the thanks and what I'm doing for others. I couldn't even conceive of that for the first few weeks as I was walking along. My head was processing in the whole paradigm of my of my work experience. And then after a few weeks, the head cleared, and I was really able to be with nature, really in tune with physically with my body, and really, let all the background thoughts process emotionally, intellectually about what was important and what should frame my decision making for life going forward. And at the end of it, I'll tell you just quickly, last little piece, Naji. So when I came home, I collated all the stories, and obviously, so wrote the book with pictures, did those things, and of course,
wow. I need to publish this.
Well, no. So here's the thing. So I read it. When I read it back, and again, it came out as the most cliched. There were no original thoughts. So I'm thinking probably at some stage for my children that I'll give them a USB or something with the thing on. But it was even though I find writing to be immensely powerful, it was I didn't have too many original thoughts. But what a great experience. To anybody listening, taking the time to set a different rhythm, a different cadence, a different frame for your life, to live very humbly. You live with a backpack, and you wash your underpants, a couple of t-shirts, socks. You travel light because you're carrying, a bag, and you need a few liters of water. So, it strips everything away. And again, I think living that way for 35 days, you really genuinely kind of engage with it. Doing it for a week, I think, is good if you can quickly switch off and get into that mode. For me, it took me a little bit longer, but a brilliant experience. So Spain, Camino, reboot, and a lot of healthy reflection around what was important in my life.
What about leadership?
So leadership, the first word that always comes in my head is change. I want to say, because of, I know we have a shared passion for love, that it should be something like that, but it's not the first word that comes into my head when somebody says to me leadership. It's about change. And it's about all those moments that I realize there are managers and very, very effective, wonderful people who can make processes run. But leaders really create change. Either change at an emotional level, a level of self-confidence for others, an income statement, a profit line, a customer insight, but change. Leadership is about change.
Great. What about, I know you're passionate about this, so the word inclusion.
Yeah, so what would I say about inclusion? For me, privilege. The lovely definition about, if diversity is being invited to the dance and inclusion is somebody actually taking you on the dance floor. For me, it's I look at my life and I reflect very heavily on the things that are, the great privileges in my life. I was given a book a few years back, that whole thing about diversity and inclusion. And in the current company, I have the huge fun of working with the LGBTQ plus group and the gender diversity group. And many years ago, a Lilly colleague recommended a book to me called Delusions of Gender by a lady called Cordelia Fine. And if you read that book as a bloke, as a, again, a middle-aged white executive, I'm right in the middle of, I must be like the market researcher's dream. I've had BMWs, I have a wife, 2 kids, I'm healthy. I'm Mr. Average. This book, as you read it as a white middle-aged executive male, just tells you about the enormous privilege that I've had. So when we talk about, you say inclusion, the first thing for me is reflecting on how lucky I am, and then the second piece is around how do we really make sure that we build a working environment in my relationships that I really not just listen, but also create a place where people are respected, where they can truly bring all of themselves, warts and all, good bits, bad bits. They can bring everything to achieving their purpose, their goals, their work going forward. Again, helping them reveal in themselves their authentic self, not because it's a static one-time, sudden realization, but to see that journey of growth and peeling back bit by bit the jigsaw and seeking out the experiences that help you reveal and learn more about yourself. That's really what feeds inclusion. Because if you've got people around you who do that, then they're going to be far more welcoming. And again, not just hitting a diversity statistic, but creating an environment where that broad range of views and styles and everything else are actually leveraged and utilized going forward.
Awesome. The last word I have to say, you said it a couple of times. What about spread love in organizations?
So I think spread love, well, one word. It's so right. It's I was thinking a little bit about our conversation, and it was funny the other day, Naji, I'm an Economist reader. At the bottom of the espresso version of The Economist, there's always a quote. And a couple of weeks back, there was a quote from a French guy, Émile Chartier, a French philosopher and pacifist. And I'm going to get the quote wrong, but let me try this. It's something along, politeness is for people to whom we feel indifferent, and moods, both good and bad, are for those we love. So when you talk about spreading love, which can sound a little bit soft, when I say it's so right, it's about us genuinely connecting and caring for others, for all the good things, for all the bad things, and being our real selves and helping them be their real selves. It's not just about, a universal hug and being nice. It's about caring, and caring enough. And again, people smell the bullshit when it's not real. It's about really caring enough that you can help people be their authentic selves, and then they'll fly and they'll succeed and engage. And of course, all the leadership books will talk about purpose and process and resource and all the other elements that we know are so important. But spread love, if we interpret that as really deeply caring for others and for each other and for ourselves, the business isn't going to go too far wrong.
Beautiful way to conclude this, session. Any final word of wisdom for all our audience?
So you've heard me reveal a little bit about myself. I think probably the only other final tip I would give is a personal journey reflection, and that is, I know that as I've examined and revealed more and more about myself, that my energy, my desire to stick my finger into 101 different pies, that a big piece of controlling that creativity and trying to be successful as a leader inside a business, how do I create that focus? For me, is the power of writing and reflection. I've talked a lot about reflection. So for some people, that focus and distillation is there as a skill. For me, it's something I have to work on. So the last word of wisdom would be know how you can capture and control and leverage and catalyze the great things and how you can control and offset some of the things that you need to develop. For me, that's writing. For others, it may well be, having a conversation regularly with somebody in an opposite part of the spectrum, whatever it is, but know what it is.
I can't thank you enough for this genuine, authentic discussion, Jeremy, and inspiring all of us to continue our journey, leading with genuine care and love, as you shared many times, for better health in our teams, in our communities, and better healthcare around the world. Thank you all for tuning in. Follow our podcast for more inspiring stories from global leaders in healthcare. Hope you enjoyed this genuine discussion. New episodes will drop soon. Be on the lookout. Meanwhile, let's stay connected. Follow, subscribe, leave a review on Apple, Google, or Spotify. And most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.